Welcome to the Simpler Business Podcast, where we talk about ways to do what you love and serve your people in a way that brings you income and freedom. I'm your host, Marissa Roberts. Join me as I chat with my favorite entrepreneurs about how they simplify their biz so that you can simplify yours. Do you have a story to tell or a message to share but wish writing it was easier? Do your words sound good in your head, but then you have trouble getting them onto the page? When you write, do you feel like what you really want to come through kind of gets stuck, or it just doesn't feel quite right? Your words are an extension of your energy, and when done right, they help you connect with your readers and inspire them and motivate them to take action. But when they're not quite right and you can't put your finger on why, that's when your message can be diluted or isn't as effective, or it just feels like the wrong fit. And this can really impact your business results because your messaging in both your content and your offer is what builds trust with your community and drives signups and sales. My guest today is going to show us how to write more intuitively so that your message feels right for you and connects with the people who are meant to be in your circle and will love working with you. Jacqueline Fisch is an author, copywriter, and intuitive writing coach. She's the founder of the Intuitive Writing School, a place for creatives who have a writing project on their heart and business owners who want to sound authentic while they make an impact on the world. Before launching her writing and coaching business, Jack spent 13 years working in corporate communications and management consulting for clients, including Fortune 500 companies and the government. As a freelance copywriter, she's helped hundreds of clients, tech startups, life and business coaches, creatives, to learn how to communicate more authentically and to stand out in a busy online world. After bouncing around between 14 homes in 20 years, she has decided that home is where the people are. She finds home with her husband, 2 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and a few houseplants hanging on by a thread, and most of her sanity. Welcome, Jack. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction.
I'm so excited that you're here. Intuitive writing is something that not many people talk about, and not a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners really even, it's not in their awareness when they first start their business. They're so in that sort of go, go, go mode. I've just got to get things done, just got to get things done, get things moving, that being able to tap into the way they write as a person and what's really going on behind the scenes for them and truly building a real connection, I feel like they don't prioritize that early enough. So I'm so excited that we're going to talk about it today because I think it's going to have a really big impact on them.
Yes, me too. And I get it, because I was one of those people, even when I started out, I didn't think of what I was doing as intuitive writing. And yes, I was pushing, going, getting it all out there as quickly as I can. And glad I discovered this process. It's so much easier.
Yeah. And I think the easier it feels, the more momentum you build over time too, because you're not slogging it out and burning out. And, you know, it's good for your customer, it's good for your potential client, but it's good for you as the business owner too. So everybody wins.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think one of the main things that I get from people when they're talking about content writing or copywriting or writing a book or really writing anything, journaling even sometimes, writer's block is the thing that comes up time and time again, right? That sort of staring at a blank page feeling, not knowing how to get started, not really knowing what you want to put out there. Like, you know, you've got a message, you know, you've got a story, but you try and start and nothing happens. Do you have any tips for us on how business owners can get through writer's block?
I have lots. Writer's block is one of the most common things people ask me about. And I don't really believe in writer's block. So I think there's some things to look at. When you come to the page, depending on what it is you're writing, I think you're either full or you're empty. So when you're full, you have lots of life experiences, you have expertise to share. The words are, it's almost like they're piling up in your brain and you need to turn the faucet on and let them out because you are full. You got to get it out. And when you're empty, I often find that this is where business owners are overthinking, stuck in perfectionism in their head, doubting their experience, or they need to go refill their creative well and get more experience. So that little bit of reframing can help block. And I also appreciate that we have writing to do. So some simple ways I recommend to get started. First of all, if writing is not the way you naturally want to express yourself and you better express yourself through speaking, then I suggest picking up a talk to text app or whatever voice notes on your phone and talk it out. And doing that, and if you can get a transcription from that, then you have words to edit from on the page. And especially if you are an external processor, so someone who, and you don't need to always be an external processor versus an internal one, but if you sometimes land on where you need to go or a decision by talking things out, doing that will help you, especially if you're like, I don't know what to say. Well, speak it instead of writing it. And then you're instead of writing, you're editing, which gets through that blank page anxiety feeling.
That's such a good point, because I'm somebody who naturally solves problems by talking about them out loud. And it's funny because I'll be chatting with friends and clients about an issue and I'll go, "Oh, I've got a great way to solve that." And then I say it out loud and they go, "That's great, let's write it down." And then it's gone out of my head. So I'm like, transcription would be a great option for me because I feel like it's just kind of disappeared. But what's authentically flowed through in the moment had flowed through. And you're right, I'm not a natural writer. I tend to find it easier to speak my thoughts
Yeah.
as I go. But yeah, I feel like that's a really good way to kind of get into flow straight away. And it takes a lot of pressure off because, when you sit down and you start to write and you think, am I writing this the right way? Am I using that phrase the right way? Is my grammar up to scratch? That's all of my blocks come up at that point, right? Is my
Yeah.
writing good enough? Not what is the message I'm trying to share.
Yeah. I think the other big thing that causes air quotes blocks is that we are editing while we're writing. So writing and editing are two distinctly different tasks. And I get it. We want to be efficient and we don't want to have to go back. We want to get it out in one go. That is rarely the case for most things. I mean, simple things like an email and a social post. Rarely do I draft something ahead of time and then polish it up and send it out. Website copy, blogs, emails, show notes, a proposal, whatever it is you're writing, the writing part should be writing as quick as possible. No editing. Write like you don't have a backspace button. Get it out as fast as you can. It's almost like a race. Ignore the red squiggly lines telling you have typos and then put it away and come back to it either in an hour or the next day.
Oh, I
And
like that.
editing is easier from there.
So kind of brain dump it all out onto the page. Get it.
Yes.
Just get it out, get it out, get it out. Don't worry about it. Don't judge it. Don't look back. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And
Yeah.
then take that break. I love that. Take a break before you edit, because I would have immediately just gone, all right, I got to go back and do it before my session's over.
No, yeah, it needs a little bit of space to breathe. And also there's a couple things going on. So if you come to the page and you're typically frustrated, feeling that block, your brain is used to that. And it knows that you open a blank page, get frustrated, close it, and move on to something else. And if you get through those first few minutes, it's like not even minutes, it's probably the initial first few seconds. If you start writing something, anything, even if it's, I don't know what to write, this is dumb, this is going to suck, get that out and use that as your launching pad. And then you're training your brain. I do this. I can write.
Yeah. Even that little mental hurdle of I'm not a writer is a really big one. So you don't have to be a published author to say you're a writer, in to tell yourself that I do write. I write well. It's just, do you actually physically write? Are you jumping in and giving it a go? There shouldn't be any judgment on what you're writing. And I think sometimes we put these sort of pressures on ourselves to write as good as somebody else, right? Is that whole, when I read a book by a published author, especially something that's like a biography or a self-help book, I never really take the time to go, what I'm reading right now is not their first draft, when I'm comparing
No.
my writing skills to theirs.
Yeah, 100%. And especially in books. Books see at least 2 or 3 different people if you've hired an editor, a proofreader, a developmental editor. Books are so different from anything else in the online world because it's a more timeless. Like you want to have things,
Yeah.
I don't want to say flawless because there's still mistakes in books. And that's the other thing I also like to point out when people say, I'm not a writer. I like to throw out and actually ignore most grammar rules
Mhm.
for online writing, especially because as long as your words feel true and they connect and they tell your story authentically, then it did its job. If anyone is reading your writing online and criticizing grammar, they are not your people.
Yeah, they're not your ideal person. They're not your
No, no,
perfect
no.
client. That's a good point. So, what about specific writing needs? Because some of the things that my private clients will mention here and there is they seem okay with social media because it seems quite natural to do social media posts and just let that flow. But website copy is a big block for them. What do I put on my website? How much do I put on there? Like they kind of have this thing come up where they're like, I'm not sure exactly, do I talk more about me and what I offer or more about the customer and what they're going through? Am I too pushy or salesy when I talk about my services? That sort of thing. Is there anything that you can share with us on, kind of advice for business owners who are writing their own website copy?
Absolutely. So I love that you touched on how people feel when they're writing social media posts and if it feels easy for them. If that feels easy for you, almost look at your social media post as a playground for the website copy you're going to write. Imagine you're writing a social post or write the social post, put it out there, and then take that and tweak that and turn it into your website copy.
Ooh, I love that.
Same process for blog writing or anything else. If writing an Instagram post is easier to you than anything else, start there. I do that all the time because it's also a fun way to see what questions people are asking and see what comments they share. And then you can use that to make that even a richer blog post or whatever it is you're sharing, or even turning it into a podcast episode once you've tested it out on social.
That feels like the ultimate way to create too, because then you're speaking of the language of the people who want to be in your energy and work with you because you're actually
Yes.
taking what they're giving you and saying, yeah, this is my spin on that and this is the solution and this is ideas to help. I really
Yeah.
like that. And less
Yeah.
work too in that you're not researching everything. You're actually taking what's authentically kind of flowing to you and meant to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the same way we talk on our website. It'll have a little bit more polish on our website,
Mhm.
but it's essentially the same. And you touched on it as well when you were asking about who you're writing for. You're writing for your reader. In most cases, there's
Yeah.
a small part on your website where you're writing for your reader, but you're writing about yourself as it relates to your reader, and that's your about page. Because we connect with stories, and especially in a service-based business, if you are delivering a service to a client that you used to be that client, your story is really important.
Mm.
And your readers are reading your story not to judge you, but they're looking at your story as a metaphor for their lives. And when they see your transformation, they're like, oh, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
And you're the one to help me because you're using my words. You've been there. So I trust you. And we buy from people that we like and trust.
Yeah, because they get the experience, they get the struggle, they get what's getting in the way, and they're kind of like proof that they've been able to deal with it, overcome it, jump that hurdle, make it work for them. So yeah, that relatability is such an important thing. But you're right, I think a lot of the website needs to be about more about your customer than it is about yourself. And I think once we translate our writing into customer focused, it's like all the imposter syndrome starts to fade away as well. We start to
Yeah.
lose that "am I good enough" sort of feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're not trying to find your words. You take your client's words and you turn that into copy. So the very first thing I recommend business owners do when they're writing their own copy, open up a document. I use Google Docs, so I reference Google Docs all the time.
Mhm.
Title it client words. And in there, cut and paste all the things that your most ideal clients say to you. In consult calls, you probably have them in intake forms, things you see online, what they say they're struggling with and what they say they want. That's what you're writing to. And you're not going to take what they say and put your spin on it because then there would be a disconnect.
Mhm.
You're like, all you're doing is reflecting their language, and doing that also shows empathy, which you would naturally do in conversation. You would reflect back their words. You wouldn't take what they're saying and turn it into something else. That would be annoying, right?
Yeah. I feel like that can take us right back to the writer's block too. Like that sort of, you start with client words and that kind of gets you moving as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other biggest piece of advice, actually two things with website copy. I think it's really smart for business owners to write their copy themselves the first time instead of trying to hire a copywriter.
Mm.
Because if they don't yet know what they want to say, a copywriter can kind of pull that out, but if you haven't thought about it enough, it can be tricky. I mean, sure, as a copywriter, I can guess and put something together, but it's going to be so much more effective if it comes from you and your voice.
Yeah. Even
And
if
then
it's unpolished, right?
yeah, well, also remember we're writing and editing separately. So write the unpolished, like, word vomit on a page, get that out. Just get out what you want to say. A saying we used to have when I worked in the crisis communications world was start with the truth and then edit. And that didn't mean that we were editing the truth out by any means. But it was more this is the plain, simple way I would say this. Like, work with me because I'm awesome and I will change your life. Start with
Mm.
that and then edit it from there.
Yeah. Okay. That simplifies it too, which is really good. That feels like it's not a huge mountain to climb anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then the last thing that I always recommend, most people start writing their website. If they're starting from scratch, they start with the page that everyone sees first, and that's their homepage. Don't
Mhm.
do that because it's
Oh,
hard. Start with where the dollars come in for a couple of reasons. I mean, you're in business to make money. So if you only have one page live on your website and you build the rest later, have it be a sales page
yeah.
so that you can bring clients in. Start with that because that page is also really focused on your client language.
Mm.
And write your about page, whatever other pages you have in between, and then write your home page. Because then what's going to happen is you already have all the great snippets from all the other pages. And what you're going to do is copy them, paste them, and rework them so that they sound a little bit different.
Oh, I like that. And that way you're getting consistent messaging throughout the whole website too. So it
Yeah,
feels like it flows well. It feels like it's meant to be there. It's not like jumping from one thing to another. And yeah, that feels really good.
yeah, exactly.
So I know that when you talk to people about writing, one of the things that comes up, especially when we're talking intuitive, is writing with nature's rhythm. And this is brand new to me. This is something I've never come across before, and I'm really interested to know more about it. So can you tell us a bit more about writing with nature's rhythm and the moon and that sort of thing?
Yes. Also know that when I first thought about this or heard about it a couple years ago, I was like, what? Is weird. Why would I do that? That is so dumb. But what sparked this for me, probably a handful of years ago, my naturopath showed me a chart of female hormones and male hormones in a 24-hour cycle.
Mhm.
So the male hormones were consistent. It was like one big rise and then a fall every day. Same thing every day. And then the female's hormones were like a roller coaster throughout the day. And not just throughout the day, but throughout a menstrual cycle, if she still
Mhm.
has one. And I was like, oh. And then connecting the dots between, I mean, this was by no means my connection. There are lots of people talking about this and writing about it.
Mhm.
But the length of an average menstrual cycle is 28 days, and the moon cycle is 29 and a half days on
Oh.
average. And so the phases line up. So I also want to say before I get into this, the only thing I did when I heard this was just become aware of it. I did not take any action for several months. And the first action all I did was keep a journal with how I was feeling, whatever day I was on my cycle, what
Mhm.
was going on with the moon, and that just to notice before I started aligning my work with it. But the rhythm also has similar energetic qualities to what's going on in nature. So I'll start with the new moon. The new moon, there's no light in the sky, it's
Mhm.
dark. Energy of winter. When you think winter, hibernation, I'm inside. I'm planting seeds, thinking about the spring. Similar qualities as the menstrual cycle. We're inward, quiet, tired. Then we have the energy of spring. Those seeds that we planted are starting to sprout. And also similar to the waxing moon, the light's growing in the sky. Also similar to a follicular phase, where that energy of spring is naturally getting out there. And then next you have the full moon, similar to summer, full sun, bright. What do you want to shine a spotlight on? Ooh. So also a good time in your business to send pitches, batch record all your podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Good time to do that, which also is similar to ovulation, when you're most magnetic. So when you have those dates plotted on your calendar, you can line up your business activities accordingly. And then not the final phase, because it's a circle, right?
Yeah.
Fall, we're getting ready for harvest. Think squirrels gathering all their nuts, getting ready to go inside, pumpkin spice, that energy of finishing things up. And that has similar energy to the waning moon. The moon's getting smaller, shrinking, getting ready to go dark again, similar to the luteal phase. So that time in your business can be a great time to tidy things up. Think nesting. You're preparing all the final things, getting ready for like the birth, like you're preparing to have a baby at the new moon in the dark. So when I first heard all this, my mind was blowing up. This is wild. So all I did, step one, was I created a cycle calendar on my Google Calendar so I could see what was happening during each week. And that's all I did. And then I started paying attention to when the full moons were happening and when the new moons are happening, just to pay attention. And then over time, I started to adjust my schedule a little bit. So new moons, I might block the day. I mean, I typically block 2 days a week anyway for my quiet creative time and focused work. But having them aligned with when the energy is helpful for that, really, really supportive. And I think the biggest thing that also comes up, and this comes back to writer's block, when we're writing, we're feeling great. We're like, I'm getting stuff done. I'm so productive. I'm getting through my to-do list, feeling great, talking to people. And then a week later, we're like, I don't have the words. I'm trying to speak and I can't say what I'm trying to say. And we get mad at ourselves. But really, we're different. Like, we are so different. Male, female aside, like the energy of what's going on with nature is different. So of course we're different. So it requires a big dose of compassion to let ourselves be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. And now you're saying that, and I'm thinking about all these times in the past where I've tried to be super productive, but I just haven't been in that zone, and that explains why.
Yeah. And it's like, as long as you go with that rhythm instead of forcing it, giving yourself that permission to rest, you'll have more energy later. Like when we keep pushing and pushing and pushing when we're not supposed to push, we know where that leads us.
Yeah, that's so true. So this is like nature and flow state and everything all kind of like rolled into one. It's like, yeah, I really love that. Time for working, time for rest, time for batching all your creativity. And yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it is. It's since I've experimented with it and refined my process, I now align as much as possible through whatever phases I can. Knowing what's happening, I'll schedule podcast interviews on certain days. I'll do draft writing. For instance, when we're recording this, it's the where are we? Waxing moon. The light is growing in the sky. So I have lots of ideas. So I'm planning out the next things I'm going to write. I'm making sure I have my quarterly plans together, getting all those ideas, like those fresh seeds are planted, and I'm having all these intuitive downloads. And it's like, oh yes, I'm going to do this next and this, which can be challenging for people with shiny object syndrome who like to switch gears.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you have a place for all those ideas to live, know that you don't need to do them right away. You can come back to them anytime.
Yes. You can have the idea, but you don't have to take action on it immediately. It's not always going to
Yes.
be the right time. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's go the complete opposite then, because one of the things that everyone's talking about online at the moment, like it's just taking the world by storm, is AI and using AI to create content and basically to do a lot of the creating work, whereas, even just a couple of years ago, that just wasn't even a blip on our radars. So we're talking about intuitive writing and aligning to your natural cycles. I'm wondering, where does this new popularity of AI and all of the functions and the change we're seeing in the world now, and I think that's going to change quickly, what are your thoughts on robots creating content, basically?
You can probably guess just by the way you had to ask the question, robots creating our writing. There is so much changing here, and there's a lot of talk about this in the writing world, both website copy, content creation. I think it's a trap for some people, especially if they are perhaps blaming writer's block and they're like, I'm just going to go use AI to get ideas. And I think what we're doing, we're training the machine, we're training the robot to think like us. And my biggest question is, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to train something to think like you so that everybody can think like you? There were not a lot of problems. I investigated it as Chat GPT initially gained popularity, and there are a lot of problems other than the problem of training the machine. The results you get from prompts that you give the machine are often, it's like crowdsourced. It's like everyone's opinion. So if you're a people pleaser, then what you're going to write is going to be like what AI writes will very much be a crowd pleaser. But that also means that it's generic, it's average. And since last year, so sometime in 2022, Google's been actively trying to downgrade any writing that it detects to be 30% AI or more. So that number or stat might change. So anyone who's relying on it, it's not going to help your SEO results.
Yeah.
And so I am just avoiding it. I'm not training the machine. I'm keeping my ideas to myself, staying in my lane.
Yeah, I feel like with AI, when I use it, because I find it really interesting and I do like to dabble with it, but I found I gravitate to, if I'm looking into AI, it's always the step-by-step how-to stuff, right? The stuff that there's no personality, there's no harsh like hard I stand for this opinions. There's like that stuff you can't get that from AI. That's got to come from you, because it's based on your life experience and your personality and your beliefs, and I feel like that's never going to get filled by AI. That's how is that possible? How can you take the soul of a person? And I feel like if we're all just creating content that's just generic, is a really good word that you use there. If we're all creating content that's just generic and doesn't really take a stand for anything, or it doesn't really differentiate us from the pack and say, look, this is why I'm the person to help you with this. Like, yeah, you're right. I think there's a real disconnect there, and we run the risk of not being able to authentically connect with people who find us online. Because even just the fact that we're online in the first place, when you think about 20 years ago, right, there was actually it might be 30 years ago now, I'm getting older, but there was no online when I first left high school. Everything was face-to-face, everything was a personal connection, everything was over the phone, and online kind of puts up this barrier, or it felt like it at the start. It was like this little glass barrier in front of you where you can connect with people, but it didn't touch people the same way. And I think we've found great ways to get around that over time. But yeah, there's always, I don't know, I think I'm getting a bit rambly with this, but do you know what I mean about those authentic touch points and connections? Yeah. I never want to lose 100%. That authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you are spot on. You touched on all the things that I'm talking to people about too. It doesn't have a soul.
Yeah.
Like, number one. And yes, you can create content faster. So, but last time I checked, I don't think we have a content volume problem.
Yeah,
We have
that's true.
too much content. What I think we're going to see, which I'm actually excited about, even though I'm introverted, I still appreciate people in real life, deep connections anyway.
Mhm.
I think we're going to see a rise back to in-person events again, retreats, although I know some businesses never really stopped that, but I think even more than before,
Yeah.
in-person connection, wherever we can have that
Yeah,
real
that more
stories
intimate
from real
feeling.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Man, it's gonna be an interesting next 5 years to see where this takes us, isn't it?
Ooh, it's a little bit scary, but
Yeah.
staying out of fear and just keep making my stuff.
Yeah, stay in your lane, stay with what feels good. I think the feels good factor is a big one too, right? It's like if something you can trust your intuition, you can trust your feelings. If something feels good, keep doing it. If it doesn't feel quite right, that's when you know you've got to make some changes.
Yes. And if something doesn't feel right and that's what you're putting out to your reader can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think, it's so important for us to not just churn out content because we feel like we have to make a daily quota or a weekly quota or we have to get 3 chapters done by this date, because I think then the quality of what we put out there is it's not going to be the same. It's not going to make a connection with anybody who's going to read it. Not the same level anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Jack, this has been so amazing. I feel like we've covered so much in a short space of time, but in a really deep way. So I feel really motivated to go and do more writing now. And I reckon our listeners will be feeling the exact same way. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today.
Yay. Nothing makes me happier to hear people say, I can't wait to go do some writing now. Love that.
Yes. Oh, good. Because yeah, I really do feel like that. I'm like, I need to block out the rest of, the next couple of hours to just kind of like see where it takes me. That sort of feeling of like, just want to get in and get started. And you've taken a lot of pressure off too, because I was the person who was always like, oh, you've got to make the most of the task you're doing and do it correctly. But now I feel like I have more freedom to just let it all flow through me and kind of dump it all out and then come back to it later. That's been the biggest aha, I think, today. So yeah, super, super helpful. And I know people are going to probably want to find out more from you. So not in a stalker way, but where can they find you online? Where's the best way if they want to find out more from you? Should they go to your website or should they go to social media? Where would you suggest they start?
Start at the website because that points to the social media. That's the hub. And my website is theintuitivewritingschool.com.
Beautiful. And I know you've got a resource that our listeners will find really helpful too. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your intuitive writing toolkit?
Yes. So the intuitive writing toolkit is all the tools I use to write, which isn't many. So you won't see AI in there, as we talked about, but not just the tools, also recommendations for other service providers. Having been running my online copywriting business for a handful of years now, people are always asking for recommendations, and even things from what paper planner do you use, and they hear that I have a writing ritual and I love to light candles, so my favorite candles are in there. It's a roundup of everything you need for a writing life.
I love that. And you're right. People do want to know that behind the scenes stuff, right? It's like, I know there are technically lots of ways I can do this, but I want to know exactly how you do it. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love seeing behind the scenes, like seeing people's process, seeing how they do things, like how they organize their day, how they organize their Google folders. Love that stuff.
Yes. I love that little peek behind the scenes, peek into someone's life. Yeah. And I think, our business is so connected to our life these days. When you're running your own business or you're an entrepreneur, there's less of a distinction between life and business and everything kind of flows in together. And so to be able to see resources on how you do things, not just what you're doing is, yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing. And I'm definitely getting it myself. I think I might have already signed up to it actually, because I was so excited about today.
That's so great. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll leave a link in the show notes so everybody can find it really, really easy. And I'll pop your website and your socials in there too. And yeah, thanks again for being here. I have truly loved our conversation. It's been really insightful and really motivating. And I hope everybody listening out there, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Go and check out Jack's resources. You're going to love them and fall in love with writing again your way. Like let's all just get back to doing things that feel good for us, that align well with us, that don't feel like the hard slog anymore, because I think we're going to get better results from it. And yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Simpler Business Podcast. If you did, please subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to make it nice and easy for you, just the way we like it. If you're ready to simplify and scale your business, you can get started with my free audio class at marissaroberts.com. See you next time.